One of the highlights of this year's Melbourne Documentary Film Festival is a film called Luku Ngarra, The Law of the Land. And it's my great pleasure to be speaking to the director of Luku Ngarra, Sinem Saban. Sinem, welcome to Movie Metropolis.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's exciting.
Great to talk to you. And this is such an interesting story. Well, it's more than a story. It's about law and about Aboriginal law versus colonial or Western law, and all about Reverend Dr. Ginini Gondara. Tell me about finding him and making a film about him and his really interesting law, I suppose.
Well, I first went to Arnhem Land 23 years ago, and I was a school teacher. And I was working at a school on Elcho Island in 2004, and I was asked to film a law ceremony. Someone knocked on my door because they'd seen me with a camera, and I went and started filming this ceremony. I had no idea what was going on, and there was this man going up a branch, like going up a tree, and I was like, oh, this is all fascinating, and I was filming him. And anyway, as it turned out, that was Dr. Gondara. I met him properly about 3 years later in 2007, when I first started to make my first documentary, Our Generation, which looked at the Northern Territory intervention and how it was violating human rights. So we first met then in 2007, and I was like, oh, I know your face. I've filmed you before. So we have been in a strong relationship, friendship for a very long time. He's been my mentor and my teacher. He's very dear to my family's life. And I guess having spent so much time with him and having, learnt about the greats of Mandela and Martin Luther King, I was thinking, wow, this incredible human is much like, those in the States and in South Africa, civil rights activist, humanitarian. And I just couldn't believe the work he had done. And yet he is so deeply humble. And, and I didn't ever want to compare him to anyone, because that's not really a Yolngu thing to do. But I wanted to celebrate his life, and I wanted to share with the world and Australians what an incredible human being we have living in our own country, who's been fighting for his people's rights and human rights for an incredibly long time. So we've known each other for 16 years, and he's a dear friend of mine.
How interesting to hear that. So tell me about your filmmaking process, how you negotiated what he was going to talk about, and how you talked with one another about what was being filmed.
Well, we both, when we made the decision together to make the documentary, he first wanted to make a book, and I said, oh, I'm not really a writer, but I can make a film. So we both agreed, and as your audiences, if they do come along and watch the film, he staunchly doesn't like taking any government money. He has never taken a paycheck from Centrelink. So we made it 100% independently, which was difficult to say the least, but we got there in the end. I put in my own money to make it happen, and we got funding from Arnhem Land Progress Association, which is a all Indigenous owned company. But in terms of how it was made, well, we sat together for probably about 7 interviews, and those interviews were sometimes 2 to 3 hours long. And so I have a lot of footage, and I just let him talk. And as 20 minutes, 40 minutes in, he would really drop in, and I would get the raw and deep, uncensored feelings and thoughts that he had. And I think that was a really important part of the process, was just allowing him the space to go there.
Well done.
But room. It took a long time in the editing room, though.
Yes, I'll come back to the editing shortly, but yeah, well done on that. That's it's such an interesting process. And I mean, what he has to say, I mean, it sounds so very sensible about Indigenous law versus the white colonial laws, and how those two shouldn't necessarily intersect. And people watching this will be very interested to hear that, but also, of course, it is fairly controversial at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's confronting. The thing with Dr. Gondara is that he is confronting, but he is such a human. He has such a humanity and humility that he confronts, but then he brings people together. And I think that that's a really important, an amazing skill to have, is to be direct, but also not be exclusive, and then bring people back in and say, but it's okay and we can work it out. Look, their law has been in existence for, if we want to put numbers, I don't know, 60,000 years. Their entire well-being on a spiritual, physical, emotional level is all dependent on maintaining that law. So when their law is not seen as something that's true, a lot of people think that it's a LORE, like some sort of a fairy tale, then you actually see the dysfunction come into communities, because what holds their foundation, what holds them together, their foundation is not being taken seriously. So as you can imagine, that's when a lot of the chaos comes into their life. And it is confronting because he questions our system. And I, as a non-Indigenous person, I'm a Turkish, my parents are from Cyprus. But, you know, I'm still part of the Western system. You know, my people have been colonized as well, as with many cultures. When we look at Italians or Jewish, we are in some way westernized. We're not who we truly were back many years ago. And he really made me reflect on how I'm also disadvantaged under the system. So he doesn't divide people. He highlights what's happened to Indigenous people within this structure and paradigm, but then he says, look, it's actually happening to you as well. And I think that that's a real gift that he has, to be able to do that.
He certainly has, and he really evokes that so well, and explains it so cogently that it's. I was really interested as I was watching this this film that you made, which is so good. Tell me about the historical aspects of the archival footage that you have used in the film.
Yeah, I always love looking at archives. So one of the core films was called Primitive Australians, which is what we used, and that was a production from the United States. That had some amazing footage in it. And then we actually sourced footage from the Uniting Church. They actually donated all of their footage, which is quite amazing. And I think it really helps audiences see that this thing that they got going on has been going for a very long time, particularly the ceremonies. Like I deliberately kind of matched ceremonial footage from, you know, possibly 80, 100 years ago to now. They're still doing the same thing. So the archives, I love the archives in the film. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really well used. It's so interesting to hear about the issue of treaty, of Bill of Rights, and I mean things that are being argued right now with what's happening with the potential referendum and so on. I like the way all of that tends to tie in so well.
Yeah, I mean that's been his life's work for a long time, so it just came out naturally. He's been wanting a treaty for a very long time, as Yolngu have. And when I say this, I'm very careful to say that it's the Yolngu nation that he is part of, and I don't ever want to be speaking on behalf of everybody, and he doesn't either. But a treaty has been something that Indigenous Australians have been asking for an incredibly long time. And there's been many promises, as you see, Bob Hawke, the Barunga statement. It just feels like a lot of time is being wasted, and elders are dying at a very fast rate now. And he is really deeply scared about what the future is going to hold for his people if their governance system is not recognised. Then there will be full assimilation. And look, it's not about rejecting parts of our culture entirely. That they actually love parts of Western culture, but it's about actually letting them make the decision on what they want and what they don't want. And that is true freedom and true self-determination, not what we think that they should have. Because we always, in the West, always think that we know best. And that actually is still happening today, unfortunately.
Absolutely. It's a very hard situation to reconcile. And I suppose politically, it would be interesting for government members to see this film and for a wider discussion on some of the great issues that are revealed in the film.
Yeah, my background is in teaching and education, and I see this as an incredible resource for education, not just in high schools and universities, but for everyone, including government. They need to watch it. And I think there's one thing to watch it and just be an observer, but then actually to hear and really listen without our own preconditioned or prejudgments. We've been having Q&As after some of our screenings, and some of our audience members are still coming at it with this dominant paradigm. And I'm hoping that people can just break all of that away. I don't know if it makes sense what I'm talking about, but like, we're coming to the table with preconceived ideas of how things should be. And I think that is the core of the problem. So, but yeah, if governments, I'd love that. I'd love to take it to Canberra. I would really love to take it to Canberra.
It would make perfect sense for them, for certainly some members to see it and and perhaps take some action. Who knows? It's in the context of what's going on right now with the discussions that are happening. So yeah, okay. So I also like the way you've integrated music into the film. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of my favorite things is putting visuals to music. And there's so much amazing, First Nation music out there. A lot of it is actually old Yothu Yindi music, which I love. And it's about celebrating, and including their creativity and their masterpieces of music. I really love that. And we've got Radawoy Hick who's narrating, and she's a well-known Yolngu actress. So it was a nice way of pulling all of these creative people together to put their name and their voice to the film.
Well done on that. So you mentioned earlier the editing process. Tell me more about that, because that's always hard decisions that have to be made.
Yeah. Well, I think the editing process for me, like when I think of editing, it gives me anxiety now. I'm a mother and I've got 2 children under 10. Well, one's 11 now, but editing at home was quite grueling for me. I wanted to put so much in. As you know, I've got so much content. There was so much content, but I had to make pretty hard decisions. And I love the process, but it's hard because I could always make this film probably 3 hours long. It's always that thing of, I watch it sometimes and I go, oh, I should have added that in, but it's blah, blah, it's done now.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I think the way it stands is very good indeed, and a really interesting one to look at for wider audiences. And it's great that it's playing at the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival. How else will the film be rolled out?
Well, we don't have distribution yet. I'm kind of wearing all the hats at the moment, directing, producing and editing, and then now I'm needing to be the PR person. So I'm hoping that to approach ABC and things like that in the future, once everything's in line. But at the moment, we're doing film festivals. So Melbourne Documentary Film Festival is coming up. We're going to be at Garma, which is a big festival in northeast Arnhem Land. And then we have a big official Northern Territory launch at the Darwin Festival. And also it's part of the Darwin International Film Festival. So once all those things are rolled out for me, then I'm hoping to stream it online, just to the public, probably from September onwards, and then see if we can get it onto ABC. Just something like that. I'd love to get a distributor on board, but at the same time, we're very conscious of things being done in the right way with integrity.
No, I understand. And certainly SBS, NITV, etc. would also be good venues.
Yeah, I think
for
so.
the film.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Tell me, how did Dr. Gondara react when he saw your final version of the film?
It's funny because when I showed him the first cut a year and a half ago, he loved it. It's perfect. And I was like, oh, this is just the first cut. So he's loved every cut. But then when he realized what I was doing, because I was taking it back to him and showing him all these different versions, he could see, oh yeah, I can see what she's doing. Because he obviously doesn't know the process of filmmaking. So then he actually got a lot more involved and was giving a lot more specific feedback towards the end, which is what I wanted. You know, the first time he saw it, he loved it because, you know, he loved the fact that something was happening. But yeah, he got more and more involved, and he stepped up as that co-producer and was scrutinizing my work. And also the most important thing of having him being so deeply involved is that you can make a film, but then there's all of these cultural things that need to be factored into the film. So there's two different moieties in the Yolngu world, Dua and Yiddicha, and I had to make sure that both of those were being represented in a balanced way. There was all sorts of things that only he and other Yolngu who watched it and gave me feedback could ever do. So it's very much a co-creative piece.
Again, well done on that. It certainly works really well with that whole process that you've gone through. So, Sinem, are you working on another film at the moment?
No. It's funny because I don't see myself as a filmmaker. I've made 2 of these documentaries, but they've been I've made them because I've been in Arnhem Land at a particular time and something has happened, and I've looked at myself and seen that I have skills to be able to help in some way, i.e. turning a camera on and filming. So both times these films have come from me seeing and feeling that there is a need for a very important message to be told. And at the moment, I feel like there's nothing else that is coming to me that needs to be said. That's in my, I don't seek out stories. They have to be kind of presented to me and circumstantial, I guess, because then it's not me trying to make a movie, it's a movie making itself. This film has made itself, and I've just been the messenger and the vehicle of putting it together.
I absolutely understand where you're coming from, and congratulations on the film. And Luku Ngarra, or The Law of the Land, is playing at the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival in July, and we've been speaking to the director of the film, Sinem Saban. Thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you for having me and giving me the space to talk about the film. Thank you.
My
and
pleasure.
I hope to be there. I'll be there on the screening night at the Nova, so probably do a short Q&A or something after the film. Yeah.
Excellent. Really good news to hear that. And I'm sure the audience will be very appreciative of the film and will have lots to ask questions about.
Thank you.
Okay. All the best, Sinem. Thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.